my creative friends! Today we're looking at a super popular pencil that school children around the world know and love. This brand is famous for their excellence, innovation and premium artist grade pencils, but today's offering is aimed at, shall we say, a slightly more junior audience. From one of the oldest pencil manufacturers in the world, straight from Germany to your pencil case, I give you the Faber Castell Classic coloured pencils. I'm sure you all know the Faber Castell brand. They are one of the biggest pencil manufacturers in the world and rightly have a reputation for quality and excellence in their artist range. The Faber Castell Polychromos is undisputedly one of the world's best artist pencils, but they are really just a tiny part of what Faber Castell produces overall. What about the rest of the pencils they make? How do they compare? The Faber Castell Classic or Red series is one of the most popular pencil ranges in the world by sheer volume alone. It's aimed at a younger market, particularly school-aged children, and can be found in many a tiny person's pencil case. But are these pencils actually any good? Let's find out. Today I'm going to be putting them through our rigorous testing desk and see how they stack up. First up, let's start by taking a close-up look at the pencils themselves. Straight off the bat, you can see why these are known as the Red series. What we have here is a very, very red package of pencils. The packaging is a cardboard box on which we have the Faber Castell logo, followed by the branding and the title 24 Classic Color Pencils. Beneath this are two windows where we can see the pencils inside, and under that, we have what looks like a knight battling another knight. We also have a sustainable forest logo, and apparently there is an included gold pencil. What sort of kid wouldn't love that? On the back of the pack, we have quite a bit of information, including info about the pigment, the blending, and the thickness of the lead. It's surprisingly more information than you'll get on many artist grade pencils. I almost missed on the cover, there is a free sharpener. I don't need one, but I love it. Pushing the drawer out now, the drawer is actually very clever, and as a small person, I'd love this. We can finally see the pencils. This kit has a great range of colors, including that shiny gold that was on the front. Overall, they are really bright and fun. This pencil kit has obviously been designed to be put straight away into a pencil case because the pencils really aren't very secure in this cardboard box. It's just a holder, and once it's open, they all want to escape at once. But at first glance, it's a pretty, bright, and appealing designed box of pencils. It looks like Faber Castell is very clear with their marketing on the Classic series. This whole look and feel here is just fun. The packaging is really not built to be anything more than something a kid will tear apart and stick in a pencil case, but I actually do appreciate the quick and easy design that it has. Everything in this kit, from the color range to the freebie sharpener and that very fancy looking gold pencil, is built to be kid bait. It's designed to catch the eye of a parent or child from the store shelf and make them want it. So far, this kit looks to be relative quality. The Faber Castell website is never the easiest place to find the pencils we have here. That's predominantly because there is just so much stuff we have to dig through. But if you search for classic color in the search, they do pop up. Once they appear, they come in cardboard slips like we have here and tin versions, ranging from 12 to 60 pencils. Interestingly, Faber Castell offers several different ranges of the Classic series. From these classic to easy grip versions, which are these pencils with embedded rubber grip, to triangular and slightly thicker junior triangular versions. I'm assuming these are all the same cores as they are the Classic series, but if you've used them and they're not, please let me know in the comments below and we can always do a comparison at a later date. Anyway, for these pencils here, there is a fair bit of information on the site. Most of that information is what parents would be interested in, such as they're non-toxic, includes a space to put your name, and a hexagonal shape to stop rolling. But it also does mention they are soft, rich leads. We'll see if that's true later in this video. The pencils themselves are a hexagonal pencil and on first inspection are bright and appealing, although I noticed that not all of them are 100% straight. Obviously, these come from wonky trees, but the overall design is a classic hexagonal shape. The length of these pencils overall is 175mm and the diameter is a slim 7mm, which is one of our slimmest in these reviews. These pencils are a wax-based pencil with the core coming in at a fine 3.3mm. The pencil is covered in the color of the pencil from the tip to tail, with the majority of the information on one side. From the tip, we have vibrant color to the initials SV in gold font. I looked up SV to find out what it meant, and apparently it's an abbreviation of Sekkelverfahren. this word right here, which means secural bonding. Basically, SV bonding is the process of gluing the full length of the lead to the wood casing of the pencil in production. It's a method used to make pencils aimed at a younger audience less likely to break when dropped. There you go. Anyway, past the SV, we have the pencil range being classic color, followed by the Faber Castell logo and title. There is a number at the end, which I'm assuming is the pencil color. As these pencils are targeted at students, on the other side of the pencil is a nameplate for people to claim these as their own. The texture of these pencils is relatively smooth, though they do often feel a little less straight than other pencils I've reviewed. The end of the pencil is just a 90-degree cutoff, and frankly, nothing majorly special. Design-wise, the term classic is really the only way I can describe these pencils. They are coloured pencils for students, and so you get a very classic coloured pencil. I wouldn't really expect anything else. Mostly the pencils look good and crisp and clean, they are bright and vibrant, and the branding and font on these pencils seems slightly larger than normal. That, coupled with the name tag, really screams student pencil. There really aren't that many of the details you get on the more expensive artist pencils here, and I do suspect that the thinness of the pencils and the hexagonal shape may cause some discomfort for me particularly over longer periods of usage. So that's the physical side of our classic Faber Castell pencils. What we're going to do next is a series of tests, some scientific and some more my personal opinion or the vibe. First up, let's test the saturation and vibrancy. Our first test today is the saturation and vibrancy test. In this test, we look at how bright and how saturated we can make these pencils, and how consistent they are across various weights. A lot of factors contribute to these results, including the hardness of the lead, the composition of the core, but also how vibrant the different coloured pigments used in the pencils are. The Faber Castell Classic pencil is a wax-based pencil, and it tends to be the norm that wax-based pencils have a softer core, which makes them vibrant. But most of the branding I've seen with these pencils mentions how tough the core is to combat accidental dropping. So I'm expecting a pencil that may not be as vibrant as we would expect. Because we don't have time to test all the pencils in these packs, I'm going to pick 4 colours from each kit, plus our dominant black and white, and we'll run the tests on each of these and then assess the result. The colours I've chosen for the Faber Castell Classic tests are red 321, green 363, blue 349, yellow 307, white 301, and black 399. With our saturation and vibrancy test, the way we're going to be doing this is by putting down pigment from the pencils at 5 different pressures: 25 gram, 50 gram, 100 gram, 200 gram, and 400 grams, ultralight to very heavy. As the pressure jumps up in intensity, so should our pencil's pigment. The scale is of course from my kitchen and not a lab, so the numbers may jump around a little. And for any paper people out there, I'm just using basic 120 GSM white multimedia paper for these tests. Let's get started. As always, we're starting with our red pencil at the 25 gram weight. Remember, 25 grams isn't a lot of pressure, and honestly the red is pretty light here, but that's pretty normal for this stage. The green now, we'll pop it down here at the 25 grams, and that's very similar to the red. Not a lot of saturation happening, but it's quite a nice color. The blue is a little bit more saturated here, more than the red and the green anyway, but I wouldn't call it vibrant. Our yellow is very hard to see at this point, but that's normal for yellow at this weight. The black is very similar to the other colors, not a huge amount of saturation happening at this 25 gram weight. All right, let's move into the 50 grams now. As always, this is where we can expect to see more saturation, hopefully double as our weight has doubled. The red's fairly good here at the 50 grams. I would say we've doubled our saturation. As that green goes down, we can see that there's a bit more vibrancy and saturation here at the 50 grams. Our blue has also stepped up from that 25 gram to the 50 gram weight, easily a doubling. The yellow has increased in saturation as well, although it's still quite hard to see at this point. The black has also done quite well and has had a good increase in saturation and vibrancy at this 50 gram weight. Now the 100 grams. Hopefully this will be the point where we really see our colors come out. Starting with our red at the 100 grams, I would say that the saturation and vibrancy has doubled here. So too has our green, with a good increase in vibrancy and saturation. The blue has moved up a little bit in vibrancy and saturation, although I don't think it's as much as the green. Our yellow's vibrancy has definitely gone up, but it's still actually really hard to see. While the black again has had a nice increase in saturation and vibrancy here at the 100 grams. Let's see what 200 grams of pressure does. The red starts us off with a nice increase in saturation and vibrancy. While I'd say it's doubled here, I am finding it a little bouncy on the page. The green is just as saturated and looks to be doubled the 100 grams. The blue is coming down nicely, although like the red, it's a little hard to control, and the yellow is finally getting some decent vibrance in it, at least double the 100 grams. The black has gone up in saturation, but I'd say that's not a doubling of the 100 grams. Onto the heaviest weight for today, the 400 grams. Let's get started with the red, and we can straight away see that the red has gotten much more vibrant and saturated here. With the added weight, it is a little bit tougher here to control though. The green too has stepped up in this 400 gram range and has become far brighter and more saturated. The blue feels very similar to the red in that it's going down nicely saturated, but it does feel a bit bouncy and hard to control. Our yellow, while it seems to have gotten more vibrant, is still a very light yellow. The black has also increased. I'd say it's a doubling in pressure from the 200 gram mark. Let's have a look at how the white pencil goes on the black cardboard. The 25 gram weight is super light here, and we're not really seeing much pigment at all. The 50 gram weight is at least viewable here, but again, very light. Finally, at the 100 gram weight, we're getting some visualization, but it's not till we hit that 200 grams that we're actually starting to get a good result. The 400 grams is going down, and I'd say it's double the 200. Not bad! The saturation and vibrance for these pencils is pretty good. Overall, they are surprisingly vibrant pencils. For consistency over the different pressures, they are okay. The red, green, and white are pretty consistent, going up in pressure at the same rate, but the blue, yellow, and black are a bit patchy and have a few places where the saturation has struggled to double as the weight doubles. Overall, the colors are quite saturated at the 200 to 400 gram weight, but until that point, they really lacked a bit of oomph. I'm assuming this step in saturation is a result of whatever they've mixed in with the wax to get the core hardness they advertise. The heavier weights are okay, but the lighter really suffer. This is particularly evidenced in the blue, white, and yellow. I'm sure you saw pretty quickly in that test that I was also struggling to keep a consistent pressure as I did it. The pencils felt like they kept bouncing all over the place, and I found it quite hard to control them as I did this test. The shape and the thinness of the pencil also becomes pretty uncomfortable at the 400 gram weight, and I'm finding it sort of digging into my hand, which is a bit unpleasant. Let's give these pencils a grade for saturation and vibrancy. Using our scale of A to F, with S being superb, let's look at how these 6 colors performed. Because of how vibrant they were at the 400 gram mark, but because of the control issues and how they struggled to get there, I'm giving the Faber Castell Classics a B- in saturation and vibrancy. And that puts them right here on our scale. Our next test is the single pencil gradient test. This is a pretty stock standard test for any pencil, and that's because it tells us a lot about the characteristics of that pencil, and importantly, how much control we have over it. What we're looking for here is a nice seamless gradient while taking into account how easy it is to go from a heavy pressure to a very light pressure, and how the pencil feels while doing so. Let's go check it out. Let's kick off this test with our red pencil. As we move into the gradient, I'm starting heavy and making it as smooth as possible. The red's not too bad. It does roll off very quickly from that dense heavy weight and stays very mid-range. There's not a lot of the light end here. The green starts off very similar. It's not quite as bad as the red with the drop off here, although it is still there. Very similar in the light end. The blue is again a bit better. We can see here between the heavy and the medium pressure, there's a bit of a drop off, but it's a bit subtler than the others. The yellow is actually going down quite well. It does feel like the others when we get to that 100 gram mark, it all becomes very similar. Our black now, we can see as we bring that pressure off that again, we've got that step between the heavy and the lighter pressures. Very similar to the red actually, but the rest of the gradient's not too bad. Let's check out our white. That's not a super dense white we're starting with, but as far as gradients go, it's not bad. We have a decent transition from the heavy to the light weights. So that's our gradient test done, and these pencils gradient okay. The green, blue, and yellow are likely the best of all the pencils here, as they have a decent graduation into the medium weights. The white, though a little bit light on in the density, is fairly decent as well. The red and black are probably the worst performing pencils, as they both have quite a noticeable drop off from that 400 gram mark into the medium weights. You may also have noticed that all of our pencils have, across the board, really suffered in the lighter weights once they drop below that 400 to 200 gram mark. Here, the saturation and vibrancy of the pigment drop right off. The white is particularly bad in its lighter end, but the other colors are pretty poor as well. As in the previous tests, these pencils weren't the easiest to handle while doing this test. The ledge dropping from the heavy weights makes the pencil jump around a little bit on the page, and the thinness of the pencils is a little bit exhausting for an adult with adult-sized hands. All in all, the classics were okay. Okay is a good word for the Faber Castell Classic pencils in this test. So let's aggregate and grade our 6 pencils on our A to F scale. I'm giving the Faber Castell Classics a solid C+ in gradients, because while the gradients are just okay, they are a little bit difficult to handle. And that puts them here on our scale. It's time for the blending test. Blending is one of the most important things we can do when using colored pencils. A good blend takes our art from the average to the extraordinary. For this test, I'm taking our 4 primary colors, red to green and blue to yellow, and we're going to, you guessed it, blend them. We're going to be paying special attention to what happens with the points of those gradients where the colors meet. What I'm looking for is a seamless uniting of the 2 colors and how they mix together. Starting with a nice wide red gradient, we're going to create this as smooth as we can here, coming down from the top as we slowly release that pressure. You'll notice because of the width, it's even easier to see that step with this pencil. Now let's bring our green gradient up to meet it. Starting from the bottom, slowly working our way up. As we meet that midpoint, we can see a purpley brown has formed. It's not super strong because the pigment isn't that dense, but there definitely is a new color. Let's try our blue and yellow now. Starting off with our blue gradient. Again, we have that step between the heavy and medium weights, bringing up our yellow from the bottom. As our yellow meets the blue in the middle there, it's quite a change. There is definitely a green happening in the middle there. The classics blended okay. For a pencil that struggled so much in the gradient test, I wasn't sure how they were going to blend. So the fact that they did is great to see. The wider gradients going down to form our blending test have really shown off that stepping between the heavy and light weights. The dense color at the heavy weight is quite strong, but once we drop out of these, the pencils really suffer. If we look at the middle where both colors have met, we can see on our red and green gradient, there is a slight browny purple color, and on the blue and yellow, we've got quite a strong green coming through. The browny purple is very light and the green is not so bad. The blends of these colors are there, but the stepping between them is fairly rough. For the most part, it almost looks like our 4 pencil pigments are sitting layering on top of each other rather than blending and mixing as they should have. Overall, not the most pleasant blend, but again, something to be expected from a pencil that I'm finding I have to put a huge amount of pressure on to get the best out of. Using our scale, I'm going to have to grade them a C for our blending test. And that puts them right here for the blending test. Welcome to the white factor. For this test, we're going to use those blending tests we prepared earlier and bring our white pencil in and lay it over the top of the primary colors. We really want to see here what effect, if any, the white has when blending with other colors. How the white pencil changes and lightens the already drawn colors. Will it burnish? Will it blend? Will it do anything at all? So let's go give it a go and see what happens. All right, let's start off with our red and green here. I'm pushing my white down as hard as I can so we can see if there's any noticeable difference. That's interesting, there is quite a bit of difference here. While it's not a super bright white, which changes the colors of the pigments, it feels like it's working like a blending stump and smoothing the colors on the page much more than they were. The same thing is happening over here on the blue and yellow. It's almost spreading the pigment out more evenly. While it's probably an indication of a hard white, it actually makes these blends much more pleasant. I wasn't expecting much of a difference, but surprisingly, the Faber Castell Classic White improved that blend. Because I'm using a lot of pressure with that white, it's done a decent job of filling in the texture, burnishing the block colors of the red, green, blue, and yellow at the tops of the gradients. It has sort of clump the blended green and brown colors together in the blended centers, which isn't overly pleasant. But I think that's due to, with the previous blending, that pigment was just laying on top of each other and not really combining. What the Classics white has done has smoothed that blend and really added a lighter end that we missed before. It's basically smoothed the colors together so it's not as jarring. I'm not certain whether it's actually the addition of the white itself here or that it's acting like a blending stick and just mixing the pigment on the paper. Either or, the white has improved our blend. Let's grade our Faber Castell Classic white as a B- in the white factor. And that's going to put them around here. In this test, we're comparing the color the pencil puts down to the color displayed on the barrel swatch. This test is a simple test, but it's important because we as artists want to know the color we're grabbing on the barrel is the color the pencil puts down. For this test, I'm bringing in the pencil barrel and putting it next to the gradient we created earlier. We are then just going to compare them by eye to see how accurate the colors are. To start us off in this test, we're bringing in our red pencil. The pigment here actually looks quite a lot more vibrant than the color on the pencil barrel. The green is a similar sort of situation. The color on the barrel feels a few shades darker than the pigment put down. The blue's not too bad and seems to match the top of the gradient reasonably well. And the yellow similarly seems to match the pigment okay. Not perfect, but I'd say 80% of a match. The black, however, seems way off, with the barrel looking much darker than the pigment put down. While the Faber Castell color accuracy is fairly off. Most of the pigments are a lot darker than advertised on the barrel of the pencil, with the exception of the blue and yellow, which aren't so bad. It's such a shame because as a kid, I would have loved the vibrancy and color of these pencils, but then I'd be so disappointed they weren't the color they showed. Honestly, the colors the pigments put down are all fairly nice, and I think Faber Castell should try a little bit harder to perhaps make their color accuracy a little bit more, well, accurate. Anyway, we're going to give Faber Castell Classics a C+ for color accuracy. And that slots them in right here. Alrighty folks, it's time for my favorite test, the break factor. How much pressure do we need to put on these pencils before they break? To me, when you look at a break point in a pencil, it's all about consistency. Does the brand have a consistent mix in their core to get a similar snapping point every single time? Because of all the branding I've read about the high snap point and how much these pencils have been struggling at the light weights, I'm really expecting these to be some tough cores. Let's see. To make this test as consistent as possible across all the pencils we're going to review, I've set up a couple of controls. I'm going to sharpen each pencil to a point. I'm then going to dull them slightly by drawing 3 lines at pressure. Basically, this will make sure we don't have a super fine point that will break immediately. I'm then going to be using a 45-degree square to get a consistent angle of pressure. Makes sense? Let's go break some leads. As always, we're starting our break test with the red pencil. There goes the point of the pencil, 1, 2, 3 strokes, setting up our square and our pencil on the 45-degree angle. Here we go, putting on the pressure, past 300 grams, and we broke at 648 grams. Okay, that's pretty mid-range breakpoint wise. Let's see how the green goes. Here we dash off the tip and start putting on the pressure. The pressure starts building up above 700 grams and there it goes. The green broke at 963 grams. That's quite a bit harder than our red was. Setting up our blue pencil on that nice consistent angle and away we go, building 500 grams, 600 grams, and there it snaps at 694 grams. That's a lot closer to the red than the green. Time to set up the yellow now. We've got the angle down, so let's start putting on that pressure. Here we go, past 500 and we're still climbing 800 grams and there it goes at 898 grams. That was a bit of a stronger one too. Very interesting. How will our black perform? Will it be a super hard black? Dashing off the tip and setting up our pencil. Off we go, popping on that pressure, 600, 700 and just over 800 grams at 807 grams. I would say that's pretty strong. Lastly, let's try our white pencil. Will it be a really hard white or a really soft one? Setting up our pencil, here we go. We've already hit 500 grams and we're climbing 700 grams and we're still climbing and bang, there we go at 955 grams. That's a pretty strong white pencil. Well, as always, this test was pretty interesting and of course, fun. So the average breakpoint for the Faber Castell Classics was surprisingly a mid-range score of 828 grams. On the big scale here, that puts them right here below the Winsor & Newton and the Black Widow pencil. Hard, but nowhere near as hard as those pencils. Honestly, I was actually expecting them to score much higher on the break test. I had assumed, based upon the pressure I've been using with them, all the lighter weight issues and all what I'd read about the tough core for kids, that these pencils were going to be very, very tough. They are tough and likely tough enough for their intended market, but it was just a surprise. When we start looking closer at the consistency of these pencils' breakpoints, it's a little disappointing. Lows of 648 for the red pencil to a high of 955 grams for the white really are not very consistent at all. These are cheaper pencils, sure, but like the wonkiness of the pencils, I feel they suffer a bit from manufacturing issues. Because of this lack of consistency, I'm going to give the Faber Castell Classics a C+ in our break factor test. And we're going to pop them right here on our scale. It's time for our final test. Do these pencils spark joy or do they cause despair? This test is very much based upon my personal opinion, which I've formed across all of these tests. Do the Faber Castell Classic series spark joy? Let's start at the start. Looks-wise, these pencils aren't anything super special individually, but together, they are bright and vibrant and really fun. I feel these pencils should be viewed as the kits they are. They come in super vibrant, super fun packaging and together make such a bright, poppy color range. And it comes with a sharpener and a gold pencil. What child, or let's admit it, adult, doesn't want a gold pencil? I do really like that the designs on this packaging for these pencils is just so silly. Most pencil packages try and look sensible and adult. It's fun to have one like this every now and then. Test-wise, they have scored very similar to the Staedtler pencils we've previously looked at. I found I really needed to use a lot of pressure to get the saturation results that I wanted, and I really would have liked to have seen a better blending result with these pencils, but I feel it is what you would expect from a pencil that's aimed for a younger audience. There tends to be a priority with this style of pencil towards strength and robustness, as the target audience can be fairly rough. This is a double-edged sword. The tougher the core, the less subtlety and pigment a pencil can usually put down, which is what we have here. So I'm going to do something out of the norm for these pencils and talk about prices. I don't usually talk about prices or give an indication of prices in these reviews because pencils cost different prices in different places. What's seen as premium in one country can be budget in another, but these pencils are actually the most budget pencils we've reviewed. And while they haven't done super well on several tests, they have been up against artist grade pencils that have cost 10 to 20 times more the amount. With that in mind, these pencils actually did pretty well. For the price point of really cheap, they are pretty awesome. So do the Faber Castell Classic colored pencils spark joy for me? The answer today for me, viewed as a professional artist, is no, not at all. I could never see myself using these in any project or including them in my work. They just don't have what I need for longevity and consistency. But as a person who loves pencils, heck yeah. For what they are, I've been really impressed by these and I'd be happy to add them to my collection. I'd also be very happy to buy them for others starting out or for those who just love art. For what they are great. So with that confusing and convoluted answer in mind, for today's Spark Joy Factor, the Faber Castell Classic colored pencils receive a B- for my joy. And that puts them right here on our graph. Now all our tests are done, all we have to do is work out our final score. How I'm going to do that is by aggregating all the grades we have thus far and coming up with a final mark. So, for our final overall score for the Faber Castell Classic pencils, they receive a C+. If we put them on our big scale, they go unsurprisingly right in there with the Staedtler. Well done, Faber Castell Classic series. Compared to the other pencils on here, that's a very, very nice result. Okay, as of last episode, we've been rating each pencil with a category or a classification: student, hobbyist, and professional. Unsurprisingly, these pencils are going to end up smack bang in the student section with, you guessed it, the Staedtler. Well, that's almost the end, everyone. Thanks for hanging around with me today. I really hope you've enjoyed looking at the Faber Castell Classic coloured pencils. What did you think? Should I do more reviews on student pencils or stick to the professional ones? Personally, I love seeing pencils of all types, and these are just so much fun. Let me know in the comments below if there's something I've missed or if you disagree with my findings. In 2 weeks' time, we're getting back into paints. We're checking out the goldiest gold paint, or one that claims to be that anyway, Goldest Gold from Culture Hustle. As usual, we're going to be comparing that with some other gold paints and checking out if it can live up to its claims. But until then, if you want more stuff, have a little look at the links below. And we have a very active Discord that you can sign up for. And if you want to come chat and hang out with us, I'm on Twitch most days. That's it for now, everyone. Have a brilliant day. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.